So there's really 3 points that we're going to speak about today. 1, we seek God faithfully. 2, we define the goals clearly. And 3, we inspire the people passionately. Seek God faithfully, define the goals clearly, inspire people passionately. They need to be done in this order. Some of us like order a lot. Some of us have clutter, and we call it order because it's our own clutter. So it's my order, my system. It's to organize. So you might see clutter, but I've got, whatever the case, we all operate better with structure, systems, order into the chaos. So we have a God who created the solar system. It's why the first places of higher education, universities, they were begun by Christians who said, we want to know more and more about the God of the universe, who created the universe. And we believe that there's some things that we can understand and know if we would study them to know the God of the universe. So we created universities. Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. We go to the first book in the Bible, right in the beginning, right off the bat. So now the earth was formless and void. In the original Hebrew there's kind of a cool little rhyming scheme. The words are Tohu Bohu, formless, empty. Tohu Bohu. It means kind of like there's nothing there. Well, how are you going to build something out of nothing? The word goes on, it says, darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. So that's the scene that in the very beginning, this world we live in, Tohu Bohu, empty void. It has this kind of theme of there's a chaos into it, and God speaks into the chaos order. God, I'm taking that chaos and I'm building something out of it. So when every other day, when there weren't really days even, because remember God spoke, let there be light. And it goes on, that was the first day. And there was evening and there was morning, the second day and the first day. So God's making days, he's creating order. We have 7 days in a week now. But since like COVID hit and something shut down and you've been home, have you heard the phrase Blur's Day? Hey, what day is it? I don't know, can you please tell me? It's Blur's Day. It's all blur together. So I'm thankful when we could gather together again safely on Sundays, going, okay, at least I have Sunday as like a point. Go, okay, well, 2 days ago was Sunday, so it must be Tuesday. So God takes a universal blur's day, formless void, and he speaks order into it. Now, I would say that he does the same thing to each and every one of us. So we're zooming out from the universal to the very individual. Your life also, tohu bohu, formless, empty, full of chaos, just hovering in darkness, stuck in sin, and God speaks into that. Let there be light. Jesus Christ is a light. So he speaks into that blur's day of your soul, and he gives it order, structure. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. He speaks structure into that. So we operate so much better with some structure. So we're understanding today that Nehemiah is going to do some stuff. God gave him the gift of organization. And for some of us, the most spiritual thing you can do is just get organized. But just because you're organized doesn't mean that it is from God and God is in charge of it. Exhibit A, The Godfather. So the movie The Godfather, we watched it recently, the TV edited version, and we still fast forwarded through a few scenes with my young son's teenage eyes looking. So The Godfather, though, organized. It's the reason they call it organized crime. They got stuff done? Absolutely. Was it the stuff that faithfully honored God? Not a bit. So take that from an organized crime mob movie. Now, if you turn on a TV at all since Wednesday, you may see pictures like this one of the Capitol. There's a mob of rioters. And you're waiting with bated breath. Is he going to say something political? Probably not. And if we want to talk about it next week, you can meet me at 9:30. We have a Bible study discussion about the Sunday's sermon from the sermon previously the week. So next Sunday, if you want to talk about this, love to talk where we can have a dialogue. But just from like one guy on a stage with a microphone, I'm going, there was organization to some degree. I mean, enough people knew what to wear and when to show up and when to run and when to march, whatever. But was anything in this organization faithful and honoring to God? Was there anything that we see in scriptures that say, yeah, they did that because the Bible told them and the scriptures were clear? And I would say, absolutely not. Just because it's organized, it has to start in the order of first, we seek God faithfully. So that's our point number one. If you're keeping notes, making notes, seek God faithfully. Seek God faithfully. One more time for repetition, and so the slide will progress. Seek God faithfully. Thank you. Now, we go back to the book of Nehemiah. And so Nehemiah has been cupbearer to the king. And we followed this story last week. Nehemiah gets word that the hometown Jerusalem, that he's never been to, by the way, because he's born in captivity. Jerusalem's walls are torn down, gates are burned down. It's been that way for over a century, and he breaks down in tears. He breaks down, sits down to cry, he kneels down to pray, and then he stands up to act. Now we're seeing the actions come forward. So he's been in front of the king, and as the cupbearer is his position. You don't ask stuff of the king. It's not your position to ask things or try to leverage your nearness to the king. Your only goal as a slave cupbearer is to serve him. You don't ask him to serve you. That's why he started in prayer. That's why Nehemiah's been praying. So Nehemiah, we look at chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. And the king said to me, what is it you want? Because he could see that Nehemiah had been crying. And so then I prayed to the God of heaven. Now he'd been praying for 4 months previously. He's been praying for months and months leading up to this moment. So it wasn't like a spur of the moment, but there's a quick prayer right here. And then I answered the king. And we'll see more of that answer in just a moment. But we see here first off that Nehemiah did just run off, go off the handle in a blurry, emotion-filled, let's storm Jerusalem and take out the enemies, and then we'll build by our own strength and pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. Let's just white-knuckle this thing into submission. No. What he does here is he prays to the God of heaven, seeks God faithfully. So as we start out, whatever God's calling you to individually or for us collectively as a church, first and foremost, if we do not seek God faithfully first, then whatever we do afterwards will most likely fail. So he seeks God faithfully. Ephesians 3:20 also adds more layers to this. You can go through the scriptures again and again, seeing people, if they did anything well, they did it because they started seeking God faithfully first. Ephesians 3 says, glory to God who is able to do far beyond all that we could ask or imagine by his power at work within us. His power at work, this good work. So think about a time where you didn't necessarily trust the Lord with all your heart for all of his good work, to do exceedingly abundantly more than we could ever imagine. Think about a time where you did like, I'm kind of leaning on my own understanding. And how did that go for you? When you leaned on your own understanding, your own paradigms or preconceived notions, how'd that go for you? If you can think about a time, it didn't go well, did it? So as we look at this and his power at work, it's good for us to remember that there's nothing too big for God's power. God who creates the universe. Nothing too big for his power, but also I would say nothing too small for God's heart. God cares. God knows the numbers of hairs on your head. He knows like when the sparrow falls. God knows that we weep as a church today because Lauren Wood is not living on this side of eternity anymore, and that kind of stings. God knows that wasn't out of his grasp. God knows. He cares. And so as we move forward in setting these goals, if you can accomplish your goal without prayer, you're not thinking big enough. If you could get the things done and go, yeah, I can do that. I got the tools. I got the skills. My back feels good today. I can lift that. Now, if you can accomplish whatever those goals are set out for, your goals are too little if you can do them by your own strength. Because God does not insult us with just easy little busy work. You guys keep busy over there till I come back. Well, God calls us to make disciples who make disciples. Well, that's hard. I can't do that by myself. God says, I'll be there with you to help you. So that leads us to step number 2. After we seek God faithfully, we define the goals clearly. So let's keep reading in Nehemiah chapter 2 and verse 6. So we've got this conversation going on. The king, with the queen seated beside him. And that's the fascinating thing to me, at least. So let me talk about it. See if you've decided it's fascinating too. The king's got the queen right there. Remember, the king is the stepson to Esther. We would say of the book of Esther, who was a Jew, grew up, and then became the next queen. So we kind of got there's a beautiful respect of women to some degree that she's at least next to the king, and she's going to speak up. So the king, with the queen seated beside him, asked me, how long will your journey take, and when will you return? So I gave him a definite time. Definite time. I have to repeat it for myself because I'm not a big fan of definite times. I kind of like, hey, can I just go run? Can I go ride my bike? Hey, I'm taking the kayak out. I'll be back sometime. Because I like to have just open-ended, Right here, though, there's a definite time. That's going to be important because we're defining the goals clearly. Definite time. And it pleased the king to send me. Wow. That could have been an off with his head moment. How dare you ask me of anything? You're the cupbearer. I ask you things. And then I also said to the king, if it pleases the king, let me have letters written to the governors of the regions west of the Euphrates River, so that they may grant me safe passage until I reach Judah. This is like 1,000 miles away. I mean, murderers, bandits, mobs on the way, anyone that could take his life going, hey, I'm going to go for this long, and I need protection. Will you send some folks? And let me have a letter written to Asaph, keeper of the king's forest, so that he will give me timber to rebuild the gates of the temple fortress, the city wall, and the home where I live. And the king granted my request, for the gracious hand of my God was on me. So he's got a clear goal. He's defining the goal. I'm going to go rebuild the walls. And Persia, if you could pay for it, even better. And God grants him those things, and even abundantly more. The king would just keep on heaping on things because the gracious hand of my God was on me. Hand strengthened to do this good work. So when we get down to this good work, I would say that if you can't define it, you can't do it. If you cannot define it, you cannot do it. So think about like setting some goals, like short-term goals and long-term goals. We clearly define those. Now, I know we're like the middle of January. Some of you may have set New Year's resolutions. I typically don't set my resolutions until February, just because I get frustrated when I set them in January and I fail them by February. So I usually wait a little longer. It's just the way I'm wired, I guess. Or sometimes it just takes me longer to be able to articulate and clearly define the goals. So one goal, just sharing some of mine. A short-term goal right now, I'm taking over Tuesdays to help beat some of my sugar addiction. Realizing how much sugar is in my diet. So I'm like, Tuesday, it rhymes with tooth day. I know it's cheesy, but I'm a dad, so let me do it. Tuesday's tooth day. Happy Tooth Day. I'm going to floss well, and I'm going to avoid all sugars as much as possible. So I'm not going to have chocolate on Tuesdays, but it's like one day a week. And maybe that helps foster in some healthier habits through the rest of the week. That's a short-term goal. Can I take on the year 2021 and just not have sugar on Tuesdays? I think so. That's a short-term goal. Then like long-term goal. I have one of it's the longest you can go kind of goals. My goal is whenever God chooses to take me from this earth, when I breathe my last breath, when I'm speaking my last word, my long-term goal is that my last word is thank you. That's 2 words. Yeah. My last 2 words are thank you. Not to my wife, because hopefully I've already said thank you to her, or hopefully I kind of, in the order of things, I hope that, that maybe she goes before me if God, just so, I don't want her to grieve. But thinking about all the people I don't want to say words to, but my last words to the one who gave me life in the first place, my last words would be to him, and I would say, thank you. It's a long-term goal. So we get definitions here, because a goal without some definition, a goal without a date and a timeline, it's just a wish. Got lots of wishes. Those wishes typically don't get accomplished because they don't get defined. So it's not for lack of caring. It's not like, well, I just don't care. Or you just like, oh, I just don't care. You care. You fail because there's a lack of clarity. So think about marriage. My heart's thinking a lot about marriage right now. It seems like there's a lot more domestic abuse that's been going on in the midst of the pandemic. People just kind of stuck at home, and certain wounds could be in. Certain people could get wounded, and no one would know because we're just at home. And every year around this time, there more and more divorces get filed. It's an annual event. It's divorce season. Some because families are like, I just want to get through the holidays, one more holidays, and then we'll proceed. Some folks take the money they get with their tax refund and go, well, now I can finally afford to hire a lawyer, and more divorces are applied for in this season, like leading up to February, March, than the rest of the year. So my heart hurts in that. So I wanted to get clear defined goals. Well, how do I help marriages? And maybe in your marriage, if God has blessed you in marriage, well, how would you define a healthy marriage? Well, we're not divorced yet. Really, that's it. You think that's what God had in mind in the very beginning when he made them male and female? She was a helper. And they were working together. Well, they didn't get divorced yet. Or is it no, I want my heart to get excited when I pick up my phone and it's her picture and name on it. Or I get excited when I hear him pulling into the driveway and the garage goes up and I want to be in the same room with them. Get really, really clear goals on what does it mean to be happily married other than just non-divorced. So, I'm kind of making that clear. If you can't define it, you can't do it. Now, when you came in or you sat down, put a big old card here, that won't fit on my pocket. I made it that big on purpose. I want you to not be able to just hide this. This is the good work goal card. And it's so helpful just to be able to write things down. And hopefully not write things down by the end of this sermon unless you've already been thinking on these through the previous weeks. This will take some seek God first prayers going, well, how do I set goals? I want to set a spiritual goal. Maybe in Bible reading or in prayer time or disciple making. What does a spiritual goal look like for you that you could be able to clearly articulate, define, and put a deadline on? Also a physical goal. Okay, God gave us these bodies. Body is a temple. How do I keep my body healthy in ways or create a new healthy pattern that my body will be as healthy as possible to honor God who gave me the body? Financial goals. What are some financial goals in this year? I have some friends that are not wealthy, but they set a goal 20 years ago to be reverse tithers. Know what it means? Like when we start tithing, we give a 10% of whatever we earn. We give 10% of that to the Lord. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse. We got verses in Micah that help articulate that, help us understand that. It's like we're going to reverse it. We're going to continue. We're going to get 10%, and then we're going to build up to 20%. And then as we can afford, we're gonna cut down on all the things as possible. They don't have cable in their house. How do you live? Easy internet. I know there's new ways now, but eventually they're getting 30. I think they're at 40 or 50% now, where they get 50%. Just split even. God, we'll live on half and we'll give half. That's a financial goal, and they've been living towards that. To be reverse tithers, where eventually they're going to give God 90% and they're going to live on the 10%. What about a relational goal? A relationship that wants to be restored. Maybe it's I just want to make sure that we spend more quality time. So every Thursday is family game night, or just some kind of set goals. I'm going to move towards these relational goals because we recognize when the relational things are a mess, everything else is a mess. So what are some relational goals? And then finally I put one more. What's a neighborhood goal? You mean my neighborhood I live in or my neighborhood right here with the church? You can pick. I'm going to pick both. I want to have some goals for the neighbors that I see on a regular basis, when we're walking the dogs. And then I have just one of my goals I was setting for around here, the neighborhood around Northeast Baptist Church. I want to learn the names of 5 neighbors. It's kind of a small goal, but if I can learn the names of 5 neighbors, not just I met him, hey, what's your name? All right, cool, thanks, Chuck, see ya. No, but if I can know 5 names and kind of that begins the process of just getting to know each other more. Let them know that if they don't have a church, there's a church right here that loves Jesus and loves you. So we're going to set these goals. So those are there, and if you're watching online, you can grab a piece of paper or you can check out the photo, download the JPEG, whatever. We're going to move forward with this, and I want to be able to remind you of these. And I would love it if you came back to me someday and go, hey, yeah, guess what? I set this relational goal. And because God was compassionate, I was able to meet that. So, setting these goals. Why? Because if you don't, you will reflect well the words of a modern poet named Post Malone, who's got a song about circles. Seasons change, and our love went cold. Feed the flame because we never let it go. And now right now going, I used to like that song, and then my pastor said the words, and now it's just cringy. But the part of the song is like, it's talking about run away. Run away, but we're running in circles. You ever been running in a circle? You don't get anywhere. You're just running in this continual kind of rat race. Which rat wins the rat race? I guess the fastest one. But even if you win the rat race, you're still a rat, right? And so being in the circle pattern here, I'm getting nowhere. I'm just going in circles. I'm stuck in circles. I think I would never get a face tattoo, not judging on anyone that does, but if you can read, do y'all know what Post Malone has tattooed under his eyes? Always tired. What a perfect personification of a life with no goals. Just always tired. Why are you tired? Seasons change and our love went cold. Feed the flame because we need to let it go. Run away, run in circles. You see, that's a mumbling kind of a life that does not honor God who created us. So we seek him first, then we can set the goals. So then we can go to Philippians chapter 3, verse 14. In Philippians 3:14, we get something better. This is with Apostle Paul. A little more articulate than Post Malone. He's going to say, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. So even when you're tired, even when you've completely worn your life out in honor of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, going, no, I'm still pressing on towards this goal. I've got this goal. What is it? To win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. So that's why we set the goals. So we're going to just stay running in circles. And from that's inspirational. So that's the third thing, that we inspire people passionately. Inspire people passionately. Nehemiah chapter 2. And then he's gone to Jerusalem. He's been surveying the damage. He's been praying, and he hadn't let them know why he's there yet. But then he gets the people gathered around. They've gone, who's this guy that came in? He rolled deep, and he's got, guards. He's got timber. Who is this guy? And then Nehemiah told them, and he says to the people, you see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I also told him about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king has said to me. So he's reliving the account of the story. This is what God stirred up in my heart, and this is how God's providing. And when you tell that story, I get so annoyed when I talk to some people going, and we did such, and then such, and such, and so, and yada, 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 and we're really excited about that. NFL players do this often when you interview them and they just mumble stuff, and they finish with the phrase, and we're real excited about that. I'm like, no, you're not. You're just saying the words. Man, you're passionately fired up. Just wait till you win the Super Bowl. Then you'll be fired up. So that's kind of what Nehemiah's doing. Man, he's fired up. He's inspiring the people passionately. God put a passion on it in his heart. He goes, I can't do this alone, obviously. We're all in this together, very literally. So we get to work together. Because what kind of culture thrives when there's no protection? Like when the walls are down, when there's no gates? I would use a phrase, defund the police, that would make some of us cringe and go, wait, what? If we didn't have police, it'd be chaos, right? Crime would take over. Well, that's what Nehemiah is walking into. So when he's inspiring the people passionately, going, the culture you're living in here, it is overrun by the scoundrels. And we're going to look at the scoundrels next week. Tobias, Sanballat, those are names of some evil villains. We're going to introduce them into the story next week, because the story is definitely not without distractions and without, villains. What kind of a culture thrives when there's no protection, no walls, no gates? Well, the chaos, the culture of the organized crime. So Nehemiah's doing something here. He's not just like, I'm not trying to make a point. Like, I want to make a difference that we could be able to grow. So for me, I feel like I've grown. If I can just kind of share something that God has surrounded me with some passionate people, and they've inspired me. So I hope that I could relay that on. In the midst of one of the weirdest years, 2020, I feel like I've been broken down and built back up maybe at least a dozen times. Sometimes it was a week-to-week event. Going, how's Shad doing this week? Well, sometimes I'm being broken down and torn down and then built back up. I didn't get just broken down and stay broken because God kept surrounding me with some very inspiring people who love Jesus and love others. So they were loving me and helping me have a place to be able to just share. This is where I feel broken down, and this is where I feel hurt. This is where I feel like I'm running in circles or I'm stuck. And then they would help build back up. So who are you surrounded with right now if you were broken down? Well, they go, well, let's self-medicate that. I got a new stash, or let's go drink, or let's go find any other thing that kind of feeds the flame and kind of seems like it's doing better in the self-medication. It's not Jesus, it's not going to work, it's not going to last. It's going to leave you hungry again, and you'll be broken down even further. So what kind of people are you surrounded with? Do they have clear goals and passion that leads to purpose? So John Wesley said it like this. John Wesley was kind of like the founder of the Methodist movement. He said, light yourself on fire with passion, and people will come from miles to watch you burn. Because you're just lit. People go, what is that guy doing? I don't know, let's go see. So that's what Nehemiah is doing, going, man, I just lit myself on fire. Not literally, obviously. I lit myself on fire, and people are coming from miles around to see what's going on there. Both the good and the bad people will come. So what do you do well? What do you do that inspires you, moves you with passion? Like if I was going to say, hey man, at the church, we're going to, man, we really need some help. That we're gonna take all of, figure out our budget and our finances according to, and Sharon already looked up. Good, making the point. Like we're gonna take the numbers of what was given with our tithes and offerings, and we're gonna be able to balance that against our income, like expenses and what took to be able to keep the lights on and the air conditioner and fix the leak or whatever. So we're taking that. So I start talking numbers, and some of you going, sign me up. Some of you guys went, I don't know. Like there's some things that stir passion. What if I said, man, we got a leak over there, and the boards are deteriorated, and like some of you guys are going, yeah, I got tools. I know what to do. Let me get tools. Let me get at it. Some of you guys will go like, you know what? There was one Sunday a couple years ago. There was a room full of babies. There was like 20-something babies and toddlers in the nursery, and the workers that were supposed to be there didn't show up. So just one lady came to me before service started and goes, hey, could you just make an announcement that we need some help in the babies? I made the announcement, and 20 ladies left the room. And 18 of them were sent back. I think they just didn't want to hear the sermon, or they just like, man, I want to hold babies. So whatever, there's always a need. What is the need that stirs your passion where you go, yeah, I want to get on that? And then something that actually, like, you are so passionate about, you go, hey, let's get in this thing together. Let's go serve the needs of the homeless people. I'm thinking about them today. They're like, it's a cold, windy day. You stepped out from your car to the building going, whoo, that's cold. Some people slept in that. What stirs your heart that you want to inspire others passionately to get in the work? One of the verses that inspires me passionately, it comes from the book of Hebrews, and we'll close with this, and then we'll share the Lord's Supper together. Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews 10, 23 to 25 says, let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm. For God can be trusted to keep his promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. So what is one of the best ways that we encourage each other? And we encourage each other when we share a meal. When we share the Lord's Supper meal together. We encourage one another. This lifts us up. This gives us like this nourishment, a strength of recognizing I am not alone in this because Christ gave his life for me. And he said, we share this meal, we share it, and we remember him. So on the night when Christ was betrayed, he took this bread and he broke it. He said, this bread is my body given for you. So you take this meal, you do this in remembrance of me. And in the same way, Christ took the cup. Just imagine you're in the first Lord's Supper. You're one of the disciples around the table going, what's he going to do with the cup now? Talked about the bread. That seemed kind of obscure, but the cup is my blood poured out for you, for the forgiveness of sins. So when you do this in remembrance of me. And so that was a couple thousand years ago when Jesus gave those instructions. And because he sought God faithfully, he defined the goals clearly, he inspired people passionately, we're still sharing this meal together.